Hi, everybody, and thank you for listening to, watching, and participating in the Racket Quest YouTube channel and on our website, racketquest.tennis. Glad to have you with us um, wherever you are and whatever you're doing. And we're going to talk a little bit today about something that we talk about a lot, but not very often um, on this media outlet. Okay, we talk about it all the time in the world headquarters, but not getting it out to a lot of people. And I know a lot of people are interested if they even know that what we're going to talk about even exists. Um, we do a lot of performance rackets, and consequently, um, our clients have more than one, two, three. Actually, had one client several years ago that had over 100 rackets. Unusual, highly, highly, highly unusual, but nonetheless, that's the way it was. All right. So, what happens when someone has two or more rackets? Typically, they want them to be the same. The assumption is from most of the clients that are new to the multiple racket space is these rackets are identical. They're the same. Period. Okay. Um, that is a little misleading in terms of performance metrics like weight, swing weight, static balance, for example, and anything else that has a mechanical property uh, inherent in the tennis racket shape and the way it's manufactured and finished, for example. The fact of the matter is, every single racket has a tolerance level. Um, when we were making rackets, it was plus or minus 3 grams in weight. So that was a total of 6 grams. In other words, if we had a racket that weighed 300 grams, it could be 303, it could be 297. So there's a 6 gram difference there. At one racket company years ago used to post on their rackets on the face card and maybe even on the rackets, I'm not sure, but said average weight 300 grams. Well, if you think about it for just a minute, well, that could be 200 to 400 grams because average would be 300 grams. So that's not exactly the clearest way to present your tolerances. Um, the tolerances probably for most retail rackets are going to be in the plus or minus 5 to 7 gram range, which means that you have a, a possibility of a half of an ounce difference between the same racket. Minus 7 grams, 293, plus 7 grams, 307. You get one at 293, you get one at 307. What do you have? You have a half an ounce difference approximately in the two rackets. Now, typically with manufacturers, the weight and balance can be changed quickly. They pop a little silicone in the rear end of the racket. That'll change the balance and the weight, but it's not going to have much effect on the inertia or the swing weight because that is difficult to change. When a racket comes down the line at a manufacturing facility, um, everything is pretty much set in terms of that inertia because the carbon fiber layup, the glue that's holding all that together is pretty well defined and pretty well controlled, to be honest with you. Um, if you're getting into a very, very, very high end racket, for example. Uh, some rackets are not quite as highly controlled as others, and that's to be expected if you're paying $500 for a custom racket as opposed to $100 for a racket off the shelf. Uh, you can expect there's going to be some differences. But let me say this again, we say this once in a while as well. I don't believe any reputable manufacturer of rackets, manufacturer or brand, any reputable brand or manufacturer sets out to make a bad racket or a poor racket. Okay? You may find them around, of course, but I think a reputable racket manufacturer is not going to set out to make a bad or a poor racket. It just simply does not make sense. It used to be that there was a 1 year manufacturer's warranty on manufacturer's defects in tennis rackets. Um, I can tell you about the only manufacturer's defect you could have would be maybe a cold flow. As a matter of fact, maybe the heating elements in the mold or the ovens were off a little bit that day, and down around in the shaft or the hoop, for example, you might have had some cold flow, which means the glue, the resin system or the matrix is not well adhered. Okay, so that's a cold spot. That could be something that happened back then. I think in today's manufacturing methods, the skills, and the technology, I doubt that that ever happens. So, one less thing to worry about is a 1 year warranty. Okay, I think a lot of manufacturers still do that, and it makes sense because I don't believe they get a lot back. That is their fault. They may get a lot back, but it probably is not because they did something wrong. So keep that in mind. But when it comes to matching rackets and buying rackets that you think are the same, um, what normally will happen is the weight and static balance can be the same. I mean, you can virtually guarantee that by making the modifications to the rear end, like we just talked about. Some rackets do it permanently with a lot of weight, and that weight then has to be adhered at exactly the right location to get the balance, the static balance they want. Weight is not an issue now, okay? But to get the static balance they want, those weights, and there are sometimes two weights, sometimes one right down the middle. Those weights have to be at exactly the right location to get the end result that the manufacturer wants. When we do custom rackets that have that kind of assembly, um, those need to come off, and then they need to be replaced depending on what we're doing to the racket. But typically they will need to come off, and that is one other thing to consider when you're if you don't know this, you can't consider it because you don't even know it exists. But if people call Racket Quest, they call the world headquarters and say, "Can you change the size of the grip for me?" We need to know the brand, okay? And we need to know what size it already is, typically. Because if it's already small, it's very difficult to really do a good job in changing anything without removing the entire current palette and replacing it with one that we design and print. So it's not just, oh sure, yeah, we can do that. Used to be you could take a sanding block and sand a little bit, but it doesn't work anymore. It's not good enough. Okay? It's not good enough. So we can strip everything off and end up with the shaft of the racket, which is typically what we do, and then fit that up with a pallet that either we design and make or a pallet that comes from the factory that is the correct size. So, so keep that in mind. But there are a lot of things about a tennis racket that go unnoticed until it's noticeable. Like my shirt, I just recognize my shirt. Stringing is not important until it is. Tolerances are not important until they are. Okay, so you need to know to the best you can, what are the tolerances of a particular brand. Not everybody's going to publish that. Um, you may be able to find out, but the fact of the matter is, you don't need to worry about that and say, well, we can't possibly do anything because it's plus or minus 7. Well, not necessarily. The whole point of this conversation is to say that, yes, the inertia and the weight can be matched. However, depending on how wide the tolerances are on the current rackets, some of those things are going to be a little different. We prefer to do almost all of the inertial changes on the outside of the frame, actually the inside of the hoop, but not under the grommet set. Okay? Because it just doesn't make a lot of sense in some cases. Because to change it, you have to take the grommets off, out, cut the string, and so on and so forth. So everything we do until we're absolutely finalized and the client says, okay, I want all this hidden. If it's the kind of grommet set we can hide it under, yeah, but that's not the right place for it. The right place for it is on the shoulders, 3 and 9 o'clock, for example. That can be moved up, that can be moved down. You can have more or less lead tape or whatever you want to use. Well, lead tape typically, you can get some tungsten tape, but that's not well used, for example. So we'll call it lead tape, whatever you use, okay? Uh, so that can be the same length in different locations. It can be different lengths in the same locations. So what is important to you? We have a weight threshold and we have an inertia threshold. Okay. Now, if we want to keep the weight exactly where it is, but increase the inertia, we're going to have to uh, place that weight a little lower. If we want to change the inertia without changing the weight at all, which is not recommended, but you can put it way, way, way at the top. It takes a small amount of weight to change the inertia if it's way up here at number 12. 12, okay? 6, 12, 6, okay? So keep that in mind when you're checking out rackets. Uh, most of the retail rackets, I suspect, are going to be in that plus or minus 5 gram category. And then when it comes to inertia, it's probably going to be, oh, who knows? When it comes to balance, it's going to be probably in that 3 to 5 millimeter range. So if you have any questions about that, though, I mean, go on to racketquest.tennis or email us or whatever you want to do and ask if we have that information. And if we do, we'd be more than happy to share it with you. But don't give up on a racket because someone says, well, the tolerances are way, way, way high, way high. Don't give up on the racket necessarily. It can be corrected. It can be matched up pretty well. Okay, so don't throw away the rackets and say, "Gee, that was a bad move." It may not have been a bad move at all. Okay, so keep that in mind. But tolerances do exist. Um, no two rackets, even though they look the same, it says the same, are going to be identical in terms of inertia. They can be pretty much identical. Some brands will say we can do the weight and balance within 1 gram. Yeah, correcto mundo. Yes, you can do that. Okay, but inertia may be all over the place. And inertia is really, really, really a major performance metric. I mean, that's really, really, really important. Okay, so keep that in mind as you're talking about rackets, using rackets. The reason this came up today is because a client has two brand new rackets. They are balanced. They are the, the same. They are matched. We don't use that term balance in terms of matching because it doesn't. It's not important. Static balance is not important in terms of matching up rackets. It's inertia. But the people that were communicating with him said, you know, the lead is off, so it can't be right. These can't be the same swing weight and weight. Well, they are, and they can be. So don't let that get in your way. Okay? There may be cases where it's impossible to get where you want to go, but generally speaking, it's going to be attainable what you want to achieve. So don't worry about that. But do know this: that two rackets you pick up, two, three, four, five, for example, are not going to be the same. Not too long ago, ordered. We did not order. Client ordered 26 rackets to get six that were matched, that were able to be matched. And by that I mean it had to start with X number of weight. Okay. And out of the 26, we found six, but they were not as close as you would think. So uh, just keep that in mind. It does not mean it cannot be done. It does not mean it's a bad thing. You have to have tolerances. You have to. If you're going to pay $250, $300 for a carbon fiber tennis racket, I know it's a lot of money, but it's not as if you're paying $500, $600 for a custom made racket. And we do a lot of those rackets. And when we get the raw carbon fiber tube, we know exactly what it is. Um, and it's very, very close. They're very, very close. So it's worth the money if you want to do that. Okay, but we went really too long on this thing, but it's important because it comes up all the time. Well, these are the same rackets; it should be identical. Well, yeah, maybe they should, but they're not. Tolerances. We all have tolerances, right? Okay, remember the shirt. Stringing is not important until it is. All right, just like tolerances. They're not important until they are. Okay? Hey, thanks for listening, watching, and join us on racketquest.tennis, and we'll keep this conversation going. But don't hesitate to call, go online, text us 407 491 4755 if you want. Okay? Bye bye. Thanks a lot. Bye.